But now with the SEC, it is easier for content creators, for creatives in the industry, me being one of them. It is very easy for us to go to this court if someone denies you your pay, if a client delays your pay even. Hi guys, and welcome to yet another episode of the FYI show. My name is Dicky Chilis, and today I am doing something different as per the description of the video. I'm not with my friend Nancy, I'm not with my co-host Nancy. But trust me, you are in for a good time, okay? Today we'll be speaking about the small claims court. And I'm somebody who likes to know what happens in any field, be it in law, be it in agriculture, be it in education, be it in medicine. I love to know what happens around the world because it may affect me in the future, or it affects me right now, or it has affected me in the past. Also, I'm a filmmaker, and when I tell stories, I need to know what's happening around the world so that I can tell relevant and credible stories to you guys when I am doing any film, right? Or if I'm writing a film at some point, right? So, in this YouTube video, I am going to share with you what I have learned about the small claims court. Something I went into and researched, and I thought, why not? Why not share with you guys? Because there are so many things that I discovered that I didn't know about the small claims court. And I think you should also know. I think when you have information, when you have knowledge, you should share it for the benefit of everyone because we all need this information so that we can make better decisions. We can know what environment we are living in, what day we are living in, what world we are living in, the kind of world we are living in. Yeah. So if you're in for that, please subscribe because there are so many videos that will come after this. Hit the subscribe button, hit that notification button so that you know when I post. Now, without further ado, let's begin this video. So what is the small claims court? I understood that if somebody asks me what the small claims court is, it is a court that hears and determines any case that has a monetary value that does not exceed 1 million Kenya shillings. So if a case needs payment or repayment of money worth 1 million shillings and below, then you can take it to the small claims court. Now, the word small claims court is a long word. You will hear me say the SCC. I will shorten it to the SCC. So if you hear me say SCC, just know it is the small claims court. All right. Now, let's get into more complex terms and what the SCC means in law. All right. It is a lower court in the judicial system established under the Small Claims Act of 2016 by the 11th Parliament of Kenya in 2016. Okay, and it was assented in the same year. So it is a court that was established by the parliament through an act. And there was a provision in the constitution that provided for the establishment of this court. All right. And this is Article 169, sub Article 1D of the Constitution. This is the part of the Constitution that allowed for the establishment of the SEC. Previously, it was not existing, but now it exists because it was created through an act of parliament that followed the guidelines of the Constitution. And what does this Article 169 1D state, and what does it mean? This article states that the only types of subordinate courts recognized in the Constitution are A. the magistrates' courts, B. the Curtis courts, C. the courts martial. Now, D is any other court or local tribunal as may be established by an act of parliament. So this is the section that allowed for the establishment of the SEC. That is how the SEC came to be. The parliament used this sub-article 1D of the Constitution to establish the SEC through an act, which is the Small Claims Act. Now, what are the reasons for the establishment of the SEC? Why did the parliament see it fit to establish this type of court in Kenya. So the first reason was to make timely clearance of all proceedings presented before the court. Now, the Small Claims Act provides that any matter before the SCC needs to be heard and determined within a day. So that speeds up how cases are heard and determined. If a case needs to take longer than a day, then they are given the provision that they can hear and determine cases for a maximum of 60 days, minding that they do it on a daily basis without skipping days, except now for weekends. Logically, they can't work on weekends, but it is usually from they start hearing the case to the 60 days. All those weekdays count to 60 days only. So with this kind of speed, it means that they will make timely judgments for any case that is presented before them. The second reason why the parliament established this court was to provide a less expensive method of resolution and more reasonable court fees. The Small Claims Court is much cheaper to file a lawsuit than any other court. For instance, if you are filing a case worth 1 million shillings, let's say you're asking to be paid 1 million shillings from the person you're suing, filing such a case will cost you 1,000 shillings in the Small Claims Court. But in the magistrate's court, for instance, let's say the magistrate's court, that one will need you to pay 2,000 bob. So it's relatively cheap, or it's relatively reduced. Previously, people were taking cases into the magistrate's court, which will charge them 2,000. Now with the SCC, it is much cheaper, and they have widened the bracket of people who can access services from the SCC. And we'll speak about that fairness and access to justice. The third reason is simplicity of procedures. Unlike other courts, the SCC is not bound by the civil procedure rules. So the procedures that the Small Claims Court follows are considered less formal, easy, and straightforward. At the same time, the type of evidence that you bring to the SCC is not the same narrow range of evidence that you can take into any other court like the magistrate's court, and we'll get into that. So here, you'll find that the process of filing and hearing and determining a case is much easier and straightforward, so people don't have to pull each other to have to become stressful to get their case heard and determined. And for instance, you may have a case worth 25,000 and you'll find it will take even longer than a year to hear that case, But with the SCC, the procedure is less stressful, it's less tedious, and you can get your case heard and determined as soon as possible. So it is simple, procedures are simple, do not follow like the other courts, the other procedural courts, is less formal. The other reason is to provide equal opportunity to access justice and fairness of the process. As I earlier said, the costs are lowered, the time frame to determine and hear a case is reduced, and it is more fast-paced, unlike other courts. So you'll find people who need urgent services, people who need cases to be heard and need their cases resolved as soon as possible, they have an equal opportunity, right? Also, it has widened the bracket of people who can access justice. There are people who can afford 1,000 but can't afford 2,000. So now it is easier for them to access justice through the SCC. At the same time, the SCC allows for presentation of any written or oral testimony, any recording, or any other material as evidence. So you can enter in a recording, a video, a written evidence, oral evidence that you can present to court as evidence for your case to be heard or be determined. Unlike in other cases, in other courts where evidence vary, there are certain pieces of evidence that cannot be entered as evidence in a court case in other courts. But in the SCC, it is very easy to get in these evidences and your case is heard using those pieces of evidence. Now let's get into the types of cases that the SCC can hear. This is where now we understand what case can the SCC hear. You're in the field of medicine, you're in the field of business, you're an entrepreneur, you're a content creator. How can this court help you? How is this court beneficial to your life? How is this court beneficial to the decisions that you make, to the actions that you make when it comes to career-wise, obligations at work? How does this court apply to you? So the first type of case is the contracts involving sale and supply of goods and services. Let's say you are an entrepreneur, you're supposed to be given goods and the supplier did not deliver the goods. So you can take them to court. As long as the goods and services are not worth more than 1 million Kenya shillings, then you can take your case to the SCC. Otherwise, if they are valued at more than 1 million shillings, then you take it to a higher court, I think the magistrate's court. But the SEC will solve any case that involves supply of goods and services, any contractual claims in that involve 1 million and less. So if you're a supplier, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a retailer, if you're a wholesaler, whatever supplies, if it is money that you are claiming from someone and it is less than 1 million, you can take it to the SEC. The second type of case is money held and received. This is quite common. If someone has your 500 shillings, if someone has your 1,000 shillings, if someone has your 25,000, 50,000, 100,000, up to 1 million, then you can take them to court and claim for them to pay you your money. Another thing is set-off and counter claims on contractual claims. When I researched, I got to understand what set-off is and what counterclaim is. I got to understand the difference. So set-off is where the plaintiff files a lawsuit against the defendant, but at the same time, the defendant also has a debt claim on the plaintiff. So the plaintiff asks for a set-off. Now, for instance, you sue somebody who owes you 500,000 and you have their debt of 50,000. So when you go to court and you sue them, you ask the court that they pay you 500,000, the person you're suing to pay you 500,000, but they should cut their 50,000 from that 500,000. So you receive 450,000. That is the set-off. Now we go to counterclaims. Counterclaims is where the defendant files a suit against the plaintiff, but it is independent and separate from the suit filed by the plaintiff. So here is where you sue someone and then they sue you back, but these two cases do not have anything to do with the other. This one cannot bring its evidence to this one and this one cannot bring its evidence to this one. It happens mostly when somebody wants to take revenge on you if you're suing them and then they want to countersue so that you drop it without even involving the court or telling the court why you're dropping your case. It's usually like what people will do so that you can stop suing them. So that is counterclaim. So as long as these set-offs and counterclaims are below 1 million shillings or are 1 million shillings, they can go to the SCC. Let's move on to now creators, content creators, creatives, and people who own small-scale and medium enterprises. If you experience delays or you are denied pay after you've completed and delivered work, then you can go to the SCC to demand your pay. You can sue the person who owes you money and they will be asked by the court to pay you if it finds the person guilty of denying your pay. Now with this one, you have to actually have valid contracts for even the court to decide that your claim is valid. You have to have valid contract between you and the person who is supposed to pay you, the client that is. So I think this one will really favor creatives because mostly you'll find that creatives did not see the need to go to the magistrate's court to deal with those processes, to deal with all that money, to pay for lawyers, to pay for this. Yet you will use more money than the person owes you to get that suit, so you leave it. But now with the SEC, it is easier for content creators, for creatives in the industry, me being one of them. It is very easy for us to go to this court if someone denies you your pay, if a client delays your pay even, you can take them to the SEC and your case will be heard and determined there. Remember, as long as you have valid contracts, okay? Now, the other thing is liability in tort in respect of damage costs, okay? So these are cases involving acts that cause injury or harm to others, okay? And here, these court cases will focus on damage cost. So if someone has done something to you that has caused you harm or injury, the court will look at it from the perspective of what was the damage cost and how much does it require for the person who caused damage to pay you. And again, as long as it costs less than 1 million shillings. The last one is compensation for personal injuries, okay? And this happens a lot. And the aim for compensation in law it assumes that compensation makes the injured individual whole again. So if, let's say, you've been hurt by someone and you're going to the court for compensation for injuries, the payment that you will be paid, or the payment that you're demanding, the court will see it as you're paid this money to take you back to where you were before this damage or before this injury was done to you. That is how compensation works. So when you're asking for money, they assume that if your knee was hurt, when you're given this money, it assumes that your knee gets back to where it was before. So this happens with injuries from car accidents. This now will involve car insurance companies. Slips and falls, maybe you're at work and you fall or you slip, you can sue the owner, or you can tell the owner to pay you. If they don't, you sue them, as long as it costs less than 1 million to repay you. Defective or dangerous products. This, let's say it's a skincare product and you used it and it burnt your face or it did something to your face, you can sue the company because maybe they caused damage and they said it cannot damage. It is therefore, they say sensitive skin sometimes, and then you use it and then, you get damaged. So you can sue as long as the amount you're asking to be paid is less than 1 million shillings. Another thing is intentional harm or assault, if someone comes and beats you. Also medical malpractice. Let's say you've been injected the needle the wrong way, it has caused more harm to you than it did good. You can sue the practitioner or the hospital or the health facility. The other thing is dog bite injury. If, let's say, somebody's dog has bitten you, you can go out there and you can go to court and sue the owner of the dog, and then you're compensated, and then now you can go get your rabies shots and get treated for the injury. Now those are the types of cases that usually the SEC handles. Are there cases that you think yours apply into this? You can comment in the comment section below. I will respond. I will do my research for you because that is what I am here to do. Now, if you file your case in the SEC, the case is not presided over by a regular judge. It is presided by an adjudicator. Okay? I know this may sound like it's quite unprofessional, and why would an adjudicator judge my case? I want a judge here professional. Now, the requirement for an adjudicator are that they have to be an advocate of the High Court. At the same time, they must have an experience of minimum 3 years. The adjudicator will have been conversant with how cases go, how cases are determined, and the whole environment of cases and how to determine these small cases. So they must be an advocate of the High Court, and they must have an experience of a minimum 3 years. Now let's get into what are my thoughts about the SEC. What are my personal thoughts about the SEC? First, I think the establishment of the SEC is a relief for Kenyans, especially those who need their matters resolved and they involve less than 1 million shillings. I think those people really, really, really need this court. And I think it will be a relief for so many, because previously it was very costly, it was lengthy, it was stressful. But with the small claims court, it is easier. Things are moving on, smoothly, fast paced. Your case is heard within a day. If your case needs to be heard for more than a day, it will take a maximum of 60 days. So I think it is a relief for so many Kenyans because now they will have a chance to get there. The second thing I think is that the SEC will reduce the instances where people resorted to violence to resolve the conflicts. Previously, you would find going to solve a case that's worth 25,000 in court will be tedious. It may even be more costly for you to get that case heard and determined. But with the small claims court, people have the chance to go and get their case heard for any amount of money that you are owed. Let's say it's 5,000, 1,000, 10,000. You can go to the small claims court and the court hears and determines your case, and you will not need to resort to violence, right? So I think it will reduce the number of violence cases that are part of conflict resolution when it comes to money owed. People are in debt and people are owing each other, and they result to conflict when payment is denied or delayed. Now, the third thing, which is on a negative note, considering the time limit that the SEC has to hear and determine these cases, I think institutions like banks and insurance companies will have a very difficult time to investigate their cases. Let's say a person has gone and is claiming for car insurance compensation, and the insurance company does not have enough time within even those 60 days to investigate and determine that truly the cause of this accident was what was in the contract, you know? So it's a bit unfair, and it denies banks and insurance companies fair hearing, fair judgment. So I think that is a negative on it, but we'll see how it goes. We'll see, because the parliament has the right to amend some things. So we'll see how it goes in the future, and if it's going to be a bit more fair for such companies to, have their cases heard by the SCC. Now, my last thought is the SCC stands to be overwhelmed in the future. We know the number of cases of matters that involve 1 million shillings and below are so many, right? Content creators are rising everywhere right now, including me. So that means the conflict of denied payments will also rise, right? So I think at some point, these cases will overwhelm the SCC. Nonetheless, I saw that the Chief Justice opened an SCC in Nakuru, my hometown, which is a good thing, right? I think that is a move in the right direction. As much as it's Nakuru, it needs to continue to other regions in the country so that these suits are distributed all over around the country, so that there is no one court in Nakuru or in Nairobi that is overwhelmed by cases that are presented to the court. Yeah. And with that, I come to the end of this episode. I hope you've learned a thing or two. I learned a thing or two, and that's why I shared. So if you've learned something, comment in the comment section. Tell us about what you've learned in the comment section. Also, if you've learned something, please share so that other people can learn about the SEC. Because I know there are so many people who don't know the SEC. They know it exists, but they don't know what it's about. They don't know if it can help them. They don't know if it can help them in their career. So share with a friend or two. Yeah, and with that, I have come to the end of the show. I have been your host, Tiki Chilis. I've enjoyed myself. I'll see you in the next one. Remember, live, love, laugh.